Hello, my name is Karl Meneghella, and I'd like to welcome you to this season of Coffee with Karl. In each episode, we welcome guests from all over the world who are here to share their knowledge, insights and wisdom in topics both big and small. Hopefully every episode will also have some tips, tools and takeaways that you can use to further your personal and your professional growth. So thank you very much for joining me in Coffee with Karl. Thank you. Hello, I'm your host Karl Meneghella and welcome to this episode of Coffee with Karl. As promised last season, this season we're going to have some casual coffee conversations. This is an unscripted, impromptu conversation, and today I'm very pleased to introduce consultant, coach and creator, also my brother, Tony Meneghella. Tony, welcome to the show.
Karl. Good to be here, thank you.
So good to be here. As I promised last season, we're going to have a completely unscripted, impromptu conversation.
Sure.
I thought it could be really good, you speaking through the lens or through the framework of both a parent and as a consultant, and you've had a very diverse career. I thought maybe giving some of your background and how you managed to navigate the path you navigated.
Sure. Very diverse background. So actually last month I celebrated 35 years of consulting. So that was a big milestone for me. And I know we've talked about consulting as being, a linear career. People think about it that way. But I guess mine has been, I always think about it as an accidental career.
An accidental career?
Accidental career. I made a conscious decision to get into this profession. But, you follow jobs, you follow opportunities, and I developed a bit of a reputation as a problem solver, so I would have clients coming to me asking me to solve new problems as they themselves progress to different things in their career. So a little accidental, although I was still pursuing what it is to be a consultant. It's a different thing.
So when you said that they asked you to come and solve new problems, had they changed industries?
Sometimes they'd progressed in their own industry, so I might have been, as a junior consultant working for a reasonably junior manager in an organisation, not uncommon. And as they got promoted, they had a different sphere of influence. They might have been dealing with different problems themselves, and so they'd re-engage. Occasionally, and one very, very great client of mine, an old friend, just bang my mic, would, as he changed jobs, we moved out of one industry into another, getting promotions, etc. He would typically start a new job, work out what was going on, take a few months, and then bring me in to hit the high points.
So when he brought you in, that's because of your reputation, your what you've delivered before.
Absolutely, the work that I've done for him before. So, we talk about word of mouth, if you will. He engaged me because of the experience that I'd had working with him previously.
Could you give us a little bit of a background on the types of consulting roles that you've had?
Sure. Well, I actually started as a systems engineer, building IT systems. And, the first computer that I built, I was actually inside it. So we're talking very old mainframe computing. And so then I started, how do people use IT, computing technology, and then what are the business problems they're trying to solve, and then what are the business problems more generally. So the common thread of 35 years has been about enabling business, solving business problems, enabling new business through the use of applied technology. Right? So that's the common thread.
While I can't ask you about maybe job-specific things, what about the range of clients you've had? If you give us some background on that.
Sure. Well, I started working for a telecommunications carrier in Australia. And at that time, that was a monopoly situation, and worked with them through the deregulation of the telecommunications industry and privatisation and all sorts of things. And those challenges seem to resonate again as clients move to different things. That got me into doing some work for state government, then federal government, for people like the Department of Justice, the Department of Defence, Department of Finance, Department of Health, and then outside of that in private enterprise. So the common thread there is that business problems are common. The industry is less important.
And also, and I know firsthand that you've consulted not just in Australia but overseas as well. Could you share a little bit of that experience?
Sure. Some of that's been pretty interesting. At one point, I always think about this as a highlight for me because it was my first international role. I was actually consulting for the federal government of China, right, the central government. And that was interesting because it was a project for social welfare. And it gave me, I think, really great insight into some of the realities about what happens in China that we don't get to see in the West. We have a very stereotypical view of what goes on in China. Working there, working for the government, seeing what they were trying to achieve was really eye-opening, really enlightening.
And also you did some work in Macau?
Sure. So I was the head of technology for one of the largest and now still the largest casino property in Macau. That was interesting, and it's interesting in part because we're talking Macau casinos are huge. If you ever get a chance to go to a casino in Macau, they are huge. We're in Phnom Penh. Naga World is big. Galaxy's about 4 times that. At its heart, it's a small Chinese family business. And I think having an insight into where businesses come from is absolutely imperative to understand the mind of the managers, of the owners and the stakeholders. Small Chinese family business, whether it's selling rice bowls on the side of the street, whether it's opening a restaurant, warehouses, they have the same mentality as a billion-dollar, international casino. So knowing where it comes from.
So it's still family run?
Still family run business, absolutely.
You said an accidental career, but it seems to me there's actually some preconditions to that you've been someone who can deliver, someone who can be relied upon, someone who can fix problems, and that's great. That's all the positive sides. Are there any negative sides to consulting that you've experienced?
Yeah. One of the things that very few consultants talk about, and that's really worthwhile knowing and understanding, is that sometimes being brought in as the guy to solve a problem might mean taking care of the dirty laundry, as it were.
Sorry, can you elaborate on that?
Like, for example, a large department, a large organisation might want to, for various reasons, lose half their staff. Maybe they're adopting new technologies, they're going into a different form of manufacture, they're going to different forms of distribution, they're outsourcing. Going as the company internally and saying, we're going to lose half of our staff, pretty hard thing to do for a manager that's supposed to be growing and looking after your people. Employing a consultant to come in and say, gee, I've had a look at this organisation and you really need to cut that or do this or do the other thing, do the bad thing, they can blame me. And then they move me on, right? And it's like, we didn't make that decision, the consultant did.
So you can come in as a bad guy?
Absolutely, and I've done that a couple of times. It's not comfortable, but you understand why, right? Coming in as a consultant, I used to train new consultants, and one of the things that's really important to understand is the emotional effort of someone actually engaging a consultant. Having said, I can't solve this problem. Right. Going to their boss and saying, I can't solve this problem.
So I need some help.
No one inside our organisation can solve this problem. We've got to go outside the family, outside of our trusted friends and find someone else. That's a huge emotional investment.
Yes, I never thought of it that way. So as a consultant then, you can be brought in to solve problems, which can be positive, but also brought in to solve problems which can have a negative impact.
I think the thread through that and what helps you to stay sane is understanding it is, laying off people is going to be negative for those people. The way that they do it, the way companies do it, the way that you can help them do it, looking at the structuring of severance packages and timing and everything else can certainly minimise that impact to those individuals. But you have to have the focus on what are you trying to achieve, and you're trying to achieve a positive outcome for the organisation that engaged you. Right? And that's a centering thought that makes what you're doing make sense.
If I could just go away from this for a second, a lot of our audience are students, and they're students who are trying to decide what their career is going to be. And for a lot of them, there's either pressure from family, the pressure from the family have expectations. There might be something as simple as add to the family economy, go and get a job now. Or it might be we want to see little Johnny become a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. And the trouble is little Johnny has this pressure on his decision making for his career. I know you're also a parent. Could you talk through the lens of being a parent maybe and the conversations you've had with your children about their career dreams, aspirations, hopes or fears?
Yeah, look, that's really a really interesting question and really topical right now. So my youngest is a 19-year-old. She's just finished some tertiary studies and she's still trying to work out what to do. Her mother and I, we're trying to help her, but she actually took a lot of courage. She actually had a conversation with me only about 2 weeks ago, and she said, Dad, I'm under all this pressure. I hear you and Mum and you're talking about what am I going to do, what am I going to do, what am I going to do? And, how do I know? How do I have that vision about what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? And it really took me aback that she was really quite emotional about this. And I said to her, we're not asking you to make a decision for the rest of your life. Right? That's not today's reality that, I graduate from college as an accountant and I'm going to be an accountant for the next 50 years and retire and get a gold watch. I said, all I'm asking you to do is think about what you want to do as your next step. What's something that you think might give you some opportunities to open new doors, to find your feet, to work out what you like and what you don't like in the real world. So it's not about what you're going to do forever. It's about what would you like to do next.
I think that's a very positive way of looking at it, and that may result in a difficult conversation with your parents when you're talking about your career, but perhaps a way of broaching that or a way of introducing it is to think about, here's what I want to do now, and that might be 5 years, it might be 10 years, it might be 3 years, and then your career can evolve as well. It can change, it can, different avenues. Your other children, so I know you've got an older son who's changed careers.
Sure. I'm happy to say at the moment my middle son, he seems to be set on his path and he's got a career that's stable and that's good, so we're happier with his path. But my oldest son, he was a chef. He was a chef for many years, but he lost his joy of cooking. Which is tragic, right? To wake up one morning and say, I just don't want to do this anymore. And chefing, cooking is certainly something that requires passion, right? There are skills that you learn, there's formulas, everything else, but at its heart, it's about passion. And you just don't have it. So he changed completely, and actually he became a truck driver in mining in Australia, and we're talking trucks, the tyres that are bigger than this room. Dramatic change. But what's happened is also, so he's found this new career, he's growing in that career, that's great, but at home he's regained his love of cooking.
Right.
And he does it from a point of pleasure. So his family eat very well, we eat very well occasionally, but passion, do what you're passionate about. And if you lose the passion, don't be afraid to change.
I think there's a really good point there about don't be afraid to change. And it is, look, it's easy for us to say that, but it is difficult. And it's difficult for young people to express that, especially in some of the Asian context. But I think that really resonates. You've got to be doing what you really feel passionate about, because if you're not, your life is finite. So you've got to try and find a way to get into what it is where you actually fit.
Yeah, look, I think that it is so important to really think about, how the journey that you're going to take through your career. If you follow things that spark your interest, it's just going to be so much more enjoyable, but it will actually be easier. So I know, for example, with yourself, a teacher of many, many, many years, and yet I think you refer to it as the lowest qualification that you have is as a teacher.
It is, yes. And
yet your ongoing education, of which there's a lot, has been to fulfil and to learn more about another opportunity. And so whilst there's been this continuum of teaching, you've also developed expertise in other areas that help to augment what you're doing and how you teach.
I certainly hope so. I really do believe in the idea of us being lifelong learners. And when I say us, I mean us. And I think we need to embrace that, where we're prepared to actually learn new things, take new risks, face new challenges. But again, I'd like to come back to your passion part. That's really, I think, the example of your chefing, driving son. I think that's really important. You know, do something you love, do something you believe in.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the reality is, I mean, I started, you know, washing dishes in a restaurant when I was a kid, waiting on tables. I wound up selling clothes. I did all these other things just about life, and in part answering that question: when are you going to get a job? When are you going to contribute? When are you going to make some money? And it wasn't until much later that I went back to university. So I'd worked for a lot of years between secondary and tertiary. Went back to university, still didn't really know what I wanted to do, and fell into IT. And then the idea of really helping organisations, and you know, the idea of helping. And I think we can all take that, no matter what your career is. If you consider that what it is that you're charged to deliver is helping your organisation. As an accountant, as an economist, as a doctor, helping your patients, helping the hospital, right? Helping. That will open doors. It will absolutely open doors, and it will make your career so much more enjoyable.
Last thing I'd like to close with is we're both in the autumns of our career life, for want of a phrase. I know that you recently completed a coaching certification.
Oh, sure, yeah.
What was the rationale for that?
Oh, look, it was, I'd operated in a coaching frame for many years, and really was a bit concerned that I didn't have the formal structures about it. Again, a little more accidental. People asking me to do some work to help solve a problem, and coaching was one of the tools to go about that. So I really wanted to make sure that I did have some of the theory and some of the, you know, rigour behind the tools and techniques that I'd accidentally developed, making sure that they fit with contemporary approaches to coaching, and, you know, having a certification lends some credibility. 35 years of experience in consulting, sometimes it helps to just have another piece that says, by the way, I can also do that, and that's been tested by someone else.
I think that's a really good takeaway and a conclusion for this show. Tony's gone back to do coaching, and I won't talk about age, but you know, your degree that you're doing now could be the first of many, many journeys. May not be degrees, may not be formal education, but what you're doing now is a step. It doesn't have to be the final step. So you can reinvent yourself in many, many ways. And I think it takes a sense of optimism, a sense of risk-taking. But I think there's a lot to be learned from your travels.
I've learned a lot.
Excuse me for the sniffles, but it's unscripted. This is an impromptu conversation. Tony, thank you so much.
It's been great.
A pleasure. Thank you.
You.
And thank you. I'd like to thank you for joining me in this episode of Coffee with Karl. Hopefully the episode was a benefit in your personal and professional growth, and the tips, tools and takeaways will further help you. Thank you.